A number of years ago, I was talking to a woman that was going through a very difficult divorce, and she was struggling not only with the fact that the marriage had not worked out, but she felt like when she got married that she had crossed a real milestone spiritually. That it was a very strong statement of spiritual advancement, that she had met the right person to have in her life, and that very thrilled by it and felt like everything was just working out in great order. And I think the marriage lasted maybe 5 years or so and began to come apart at the seams, and then it totally dissolved. And so one of her questions was, what about me on the spiritual path? I feel like a total failure in watching this thing that I thought was perfect and a manifestation of my spiritual consciousness, that I was really making some advances, and that it now looks like it was a complete lie. So where am I on my spiritual path? And in my great wisdom, I just said, well, you're here, which didn't really help. And what I meant by that, and what I explained, is that is a circumstance. That's an incident. The marriage didn't work out. Sometimes they don't. But it's not a sign of any failure on your part in terms of your spiritual development, because you can't mess that up. You are now a complete soul. You will always be a complete soul. You can go through the fires of circumstances that just don't work out. But if you measure your growth by those kinds of things, you'll never feel like you're making any advances at all. Because always in the external life, in the external side of our life, there will be advances and there will be setbacks. There will be successes and there will be failures. There will be relationships that work through one period and don't work in another. And actually, the way you advance through these things is to see yourself as the constant. That steady presence that is going through all of these circumstances. But you're not your emotions, you're not your ups and downs that you experience mentally or emotionally. We get caught in that. That's the self-image. We get caught in that side of ourselves that feels like we're making great advances through one period of our life, and we're taking steps back through another. And this is all due to thinking of the path as we might, as the photo shows here, as a person walking on an actual trail, walking on a path. It has a place where we got on, and we consider that probably our birth, at least this phase of our experience, and we think the end of the trail is when we step off of this planet, when we lose the body. And we try to evaluate everything in between. Did I make progress? Did I make spiritual progress? To understand this properly, from a spiritual point of view, we would say the soul never makes progress. The soul never needs to make progress because the soul is complete. And so what we do is we heap upon ourselves all kinds of spiritual burdens because we have not expressed perfectly what we think we should or can. And so we designate ourselves as incomplete or unevolved. And there's a lot we need to learn. So a path, and this is why this is important to understand, because an actual path is defined as a way or track laid down for walking or made by continual treading. A path is defined as a way or track laid down for walking or made by continual treading. We all know what the path is. We go out hiking around here all the time. There's all kinds of trails, hiking trails, and so forth. But it's a set way. It's a route that has a beginning and an end, and we, decide what that will be for us as we're getting our exercise or whatever we're doing. But a path is also a process of getting from one place to another. And in a sense, this would be more applicable to how most of us think of the spiritual path. We are where we are. We're going through life. It all seems to be fine. Something happens and we collapse. We have a meltdown and we think, well, I'm not as spiritually advanced as I thought I was. So my path involves learning how to get past these kinds of things. So in other words, I'm not complete yet. I'm here at this place on the trail, but I can see ahead in the distance, in time and study and so forth. If I add something more to myself, I'll overcome this kind of reaction and I'll be a better soul. I'll be a better person at a future time. So in this sense, the spiritual growth, as we call it, is a process. We see it as a process. And it's sort of like this, we tend to see the spiritual path as a process of soul development, of moving from one place in our soul's growth to another more advanced condition. And I would imagine that's the image most of us hold, is that I'm here now and I have a ways to go, maybe a long ways. Maybe I'm making progress, maybe not. But we see the spiritual path, as a process. And I think I could illustrate it better with a picture. If you think of yourself and how you see yourself, how you think of yourself, a lot of who we think we are is up here. It's an intellectual perception of who we are. When you think, where do you think? Where do you think from? I think most of us would say from up here someplace. And that's why science says it's the brain. It's a brain activity. The brain is certainly active while we think, while we have these self-perceptions. And so we have this idea, and if you look at the bottom left, you'll see the little blue dot down there. That's kind of us on this path. And the line represents distance or time, someplace in the future. Our present understanding and spiritual enlightenment is someplace in the future. And if you'll watch the self-image in the head, it begins to totally engulf the individual. So I will become spiritually enlightened. That is the process that I'm thinking about as I think about my spiritual growth. It's going from the head to the whole being, the head to the heart even, but it's a process of adding information. That's how we normally think of the spiritual path. And how do we add more information? We do things like come to church, we read books, we get information from other people. Maybe we become still and we meditate on scripture, or we meditate on some passage we read from a book. But the point here is a head trip. It's an intellectual journey. That's how we see it. In the timeline that we're on, we go from present understanding to spiritual enlightenment. It's a place in the future. I talked about spiritual enlightenment a few weeks ago, but how many of us would say that I am right now spiritually enlightened? And I would say most of us would think, well, I've got a way to go. I don't feel spiritually enlightened. I have days where I feel good. But I perceive the whole experience of spiritual enlightenment as a constant knowing the presence of God, knowing that I'm a spiritual being always, not having to remind myself 3 hours after I got that speeding ticket and I'm still not quite over it. That I'm still moving in that direction, but I get knocked off my spiritual high horse pretty easy. So I forget. So obviously I'm not there yet. I'm someplace on this timeline. I'm someplace between the right and left leg. and maybe not even that far along. But my present understanding will someday be different. And that's where we get tricked. On the spiritual path, there's no point you can reach in the future when your soul will be more than it is now. That's a very important statement, a very important idea to hold on to, and you're probably sick of hearing me say it because I say it all the time. That you will never reach a point where you are more spiritually advanced than you are right now. We say, that sounds great, and I love hearing that. But then I get that ticket and I'm all in a huff. I guess I'm not spiritually advanced. I guess that's just wishful thinking. But when you get into a huff and when you have a reaction to some condition in life, the soul stays constant. It doesn't change. It doesn't get involved in the huff. It sees that as a, what do they call it, a nothing burger. There's nothing there. It just kind of sits back and looks at the sky and the ground and waits. It says to the self-image, you can get involved all you want, but I'm opting out. I'm not going to get involved in that. I don't need to, because nothing in me can be hurt. Nothing in me can be taken away or destroyed. We have this self-image, we have this personality, and it's interfacing with the three-dimensional world, and the three-dimensional world is kind of a roller coaster ride. There's always something going on that's weird. I had a potential home invasion this week. I was recording a video down in the lower level of our home, and I heard the door open and close, and I thought Beth had come home and to get something, and a couple hours later I saw her and I said, "What did you forget?" And she said, "I didn't forget anything. I never came back." So it was somebody. I don't know who. But that kind of thing happens. And nothing happened, fortunately, but it is a attention getter. And so here goes my self-image. But the soul is never moved by that. I'm making a video about the soul, telling the virtues of the soul, and my self-image is wondering, who came in my house? So there's this thing going on all the time. We're in this world. But the soul, the true self, you, are not of it. We're not born of this world. We are not of the flesh. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Souls do not give birth to souls. We give birth to bodies. Who was that? That was you talking about that with your daughters, saying you gave birth to these people, and they weren't there before, now they are. And it's true. But we don't give birth to their souls. And I am kind of thankful for that, because our kids are so different than either one of us. I don't know where they came from. Surely not me. Had to be Beth's side of the family somehow, but anyway. But from neither side of the family. In fact, both moments of conception, I knew that they were there. It was a very warm, very loving feeling. And it was something that I knew I was not part of. So souls do not give birth to souls. We're all expressions of one source. And we're in this world, and we have kids, we do all the things, we have circumstances that are unique to us, and those are constantly under attack or change or whatever might be going on, and that part of us that interfaces with all of that is up and down all the time. That part we're going to drop one of these days. But we still have it, and we are still calling it us. I'm upset. My life is going no place. You know, the soul doesn't make that statement. The soul always is in its right place. Circumstances have nothing to do with the soul. They do not move the soul. But they happen, circumstances change, we jump into them, and we get all emotionally and mentally involved. And we go down. The self-image goes down, but the soul, again, just stands back and kind of looks at things. So that's kind of this model. We have the self-image still in the head. The soul is encompassing the body. You know, we think often that the soul is somewhere in the body, but think of the body in your soul. Think of your soul as this reality that is an atmosphere that sustains your body wherever you go. It's an energy field. And if it's absent, the body can't do anything. But when we think of the spiritual path in this way, you notice there's no timeline, but there's self-awareness. All of us are experiencing self-awareness right now. And hopefully with just some thoughts like this, we're broadening our self-awareness. We're open to a deeper possibility of who and what we are. But the spiritual path becomes something else. It becomes a movement of our self-awareness, to become aware of the soul, to become aware of our spiritual nature. You may prefer a term like to become aware of the Christ in us. I don't use that term that much because it sends me back 2,000 years. And we don't want to go back 2,000 years. The soul is consistent. It's always here. The spiritual path is a process of becoming aware of what is true now. So that puts a whole different slant on the idea of the path. Say you're walking on a trail. You can only be one place at a time. And if you want your life to be good, why not let it be good there? At that moment. At that place, the only place you can be on that trail. It's like, why not enjoy the experience? Why not be here now? So the spiritual path is not distance, has nothing to do with time. It has to do with where our self-awareness is, where our focus is. Is it on the trail, on the path? Is it on all of the things that we're going through, the circumstances, the people, the arguments, the problems we have with this earthly experience? When I can resolve all of those, or when I get to a place where those don't bother me anymore, I'll be up there someplace on the trail, on the path. So I think of the spiritual path in terms of time. Time and space. I'm here now, I'll be there someday. That's time and space. So the whole time we're thinking this, the soul is complete. If the soul were absent, so would we be absent. The body wouldn't exist, it could not be here. So we are proof, the body is the proof that there's something here sustaining it right now. And that something isn't changing. Our self-perception changes. And so the spiritual path, we take it off of this grid, off of this timeline, the time and space thing, and say there is no distance between where I am now and where I want to be spiritually. That I'm here now. If you're recovering from some substance abuse or some problem that you're having, you may be doing the same thing, putting your recovery somewhere in the future. Your soul's never been addicted to anything. And that's a very important idea to grasp, to let the self-awareness, let it into the self-awareness, is I'm whole now. I'm complete now. It's not 4 months till harvest. The harvest is already here. Waiting for the worker, waiting for me, waiting for my self-awareness. And so I hold on to the thing, whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you have received it. You think of all the answers to your prayer is in that pink sphere, the soul. That's what I'm really after. I'm after that place of absolute peace. That place of absolute knowing that my life is in divine order, that I am whole and free right now. That what I seek is a body-centered idea, self-image, That there is no distance between where I am and where I want to be. This was the whole message in the pool of Bethesda when the man for 38 years lay by the pool waiting for someone to help him to that place, to that pool. When the angel stirred the water, the belief was the first person in the water would be healed. And so Jesus saw this man that had been there 38 years and said, "What's the deal? Why are you here? What are you doing?" The man said, "Time and space. I have no one to get me from here to there in time. I'm not privy to the healing process of this pool." And Jesus said, "Just take up your bed and walk. You don't need to do that." That's the principle that's being talked about or being illustrated in this story. It's we're laying here saying time and space. Someday I'll be. And the truth is, it's just a matter of self-awareness. The path I'm on is a shift in perception. That's my path, is how I am able to shift my perception from one level of seeing myself, one way of seeing myself, to the true way, to see myself as I truly am at the soul level. I am whole, I am finished, I'm complete. So you're perfectly positioned right now, every one of us. Your soul does not improve with time or different circumstances. So just think about this and how you're thinking about your own spiritual path. See if you're waiting or imagining someday you'll have access to more information, or you'll have more truth in your consciousness. Whatever your consciousness is made of, it can be made of the worst lies on the planet and your soul is still okay. That's an important idea. It doesn't matter what kind of atmosphere you surround yourself in. In my book, The Complete Soul, I say the soul or the self-image, both can generate consciousness. Consciousness being that belief system, those ideas. We believed the world was flat at one time. That was a part of the race consciousness. So what happened when we got over that, when people started discovering the earth is a sphere, it's round, that it's not flat? Did the earth change? Nothing changed. Our self-perception changed. That's all that changed. And it's the same with us. We say, my soul is incomplete, but then we discover, no, it's whole, it's complete now. That changes the whole way I think of my spiritual journey. If that's true, why am I not experiencing it now? And I stop saying to myself, it's not because I'm spiritually ignorant. It's where my self-awareness is. It's where my focus is. I'm focused somewhere in the future. Someday I'll be enlightened. So I bring my attention back. Right now I'm in the presence of God. I'm in the presence of pure being. This very moment. That means there's no place where I leave off and God begins. There's no place where God leaves off and I begin. I am in the Father's in me. The Father's greater, but I am an expression of that. There's no difference. I'm the drop of water from the ocean. The same parts are in me that are in the ocean, just in expression. So it's a matter of self-acceptance. I don't move to become something more than I am. I'm already that. Whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe you've received it. Adjust your mind to that truth. You don't have a set of required lessons to learn that will take you further down the spiritual path. You don't have a set of required lessons to learn that will take you further down the spiritual path. Most of us think we do. I've got a lot to learn. I'm a long way from being an enlightened soul. And we think that within the circumstances that we are confronted with, that's where we're going to learn the lessons the soul needs to learn. But the soul has nothing to do with that. The soul is immaterial. It's the self-image that is wrapped up in that. And maybe the self-image can be improved. There's no doubt. They say the biggest room for improvement is the self-image. something like that. Biggest room for improvement is... Anyway, the self-image can always improve, but the self-image can never become the soul. We will eventually drop the self-image and will be the soul directly aware. The soul will create consciousness. Our consciousness, the ideas that we hold, will reflect what is true of us at the spiritual level. That's where Jesus was coming from. That's why it seems like he's from another planet, because he was not coming from the typical personality, self-image everyone was so used to. He was coming from the soul. I'm not of this world. I'm of something deeper, something different. If you think you'll gain more of your soul in the future, excuse me, you'll always be plagued with the false notion that something essential is lacking. So we need to remind ourselves when we feel that way, that something's lacking, that I'm not complete now, to stop ourselves, stop that type of thought and say, that's my self-image speaking. My soul is complete. I am open and receptive to the radiance of my soul, of pure being, right now, right here, right now. So the truth of the spiritual path, the truth about the spiritual path is you are spiritually complete right now. And that is a much stronger line than you might think, because it is a very powerful truth. I am spiritually complete right now. You won't find more of who and what you are in more and different circumstances. And think about that, how you're trying to change, how we all try to change our circumstances to let more of ourself out, let more of our light shine. When my circumstances change, I'll be happier, I'll be more at peace. But nothing is keeping happiness and peace from expressing through you right now. So we let it, we open ourselves to that. You're here now, you'll always be here, and you'll always be spiritually complete. Okay? And I will be happy to speak about any subject that you bring up, so let me know if you have some other ideas you want me to talk about. The truth. You want to know the truth about anything, I'll tell you what it is. Okay? Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next week.